Good evening. Tonight, we bring you a story that is sending ripples across the globe, a development that could have far-reaching consequences for economies, industries, and everyday lives. Boeing, one of America's most iconic companies, has suspended its operations in China, a move that could reshape the global economy as we know it. But this isn't just about airplanes or business deals. It's about power, politics, and the uncertain future of global trade in a world where alliances are shifting. The shockwaves from this decision are being felt from Seattle to Beijing, marking a critical turning point in the already complex relationship between the US and China. For decades, American companies like Boeing have relied on China's vast market for growth, while China has benefited from technology transfers and job creation. Now that once solid foundation is beginning to crack, raising questions about what comes next. The rules of global business are changing rapidly, and the risks for American manufacturing and for workers on both sides have never been higher. This decision will impact the price of goods, job security, and even the stability of the world order, affecting millions of lives in ways both seen and unseen. Boeing's suspension is a bold and risky move in a high-stakes chess match between two global superpowers, fueled by years of escalating trade tensions and mutual suspicion. It follows a series of tariffs, sanctions, and heated rhetoric from both sides, each action adding fuel to an already volatile situation. Tonight, we'll break down what led to this dramatic moment and explore what it means for workers, families, and the future of global trade. We'll hear from leading experts and examine whether this is an isolated event or part of a much larger trend toward economic decoupling between the world's two largest economies. The world is watching closely, holding its breath as this unprecedented drama unfolds before our eyes. The story of Boeing in China is no longer just a business headline. It's now the story of our collective future, with implications for generations to come. Stay with us as we continue to follow this developing story. End of scene. To understand today's news, we need to look back. Boeing's relationship with China began in the 1970s, as the company sold its first jets during a new era of US-China engagement. Over decades, China's demand for airplanes soared, making it Boeing's most important international market. In return, China pushed for technology transfers and local jobs, leading to joint ventures like the Zhoushan Completion Center. This partnership created deep interdependence, but also tension. Recently, the relationship has soured. Trade wars, tariffs, and the rise of China's own aerospace giant, COMAC, have put Boeing under pressure. The stage was set for confrontation, with Boeing caught in the crossfire of escalating US-China tensions. Now, the partnership that once symbolized cooperation is unraveling. The stakes for both sides and the world are enormous. End of scene. Yesterday, Boeing stunned the world by suspending major operations in China, effective immediately. The company cited an uncertain business environment, closing its Zhoushan facility, a joint venture with COMAC. Boeing's CEO called it an incredibly difficult decision, with no timeline for resuming operations. The move halts delivery of hundreds of aircraft worth billions, leaving Chinese airlines and workers in limbo. Beijing's response was swift, condemning the decision as economic coercion and warning of further measures. On the ground, over 1,500 workers were turned away without warning, their futures suddenly uncertain. The human impact is immediate and devastating, as families await news about their livelihoods. This is more than a business story. It's a political flashpoint with global consequences. The world is watching to see what comes next. End of scene. The ripple effects of Boeing's decision were felt instantly, from China to the US. In Washington state, union leaders warned of a devastating blow to American jobs and suppliers. Politicians split. Some praised the move as standing up to China. Others called it a self-inflicted wound. Boeing's stock plunged, triggering a broader market sell-off and raising fears of wider economic decoupling. Meanwhile, Airbus, Boeing's European rival, is quietly positioning itself to fill the gap in China. Industry insiders say Airbus could lock in decades of future sales while Boeing is sidelined. The decision, meant to protect American interests, could ultimately strengthen its biggest competitor. The uncertainty is spreading across industries, as companies wonder if they'll be next. The stakes for workers, businesses, and the global economy are rising fast. End of scene. Boeing's suspension is a major escalation in the US-China rivalry. American officials see it as a response to unfair competition. China sees it as economic containment. Chinese media frames the move as proof the US can't be trusted, fueling calls for self-sufficiency. The event accelerates economic decoupling as companies worldwide reconsider their China strategies. Allies in Europe and Asia are caught in the middle, wary of choosing sides. The era of seamless globalization is ending, replaced by fragmented economic blocs. The world faces a new, uncertain reality. End of scene. The fallout from Boeing's China suspension ripples far beyond aerospace. Losing China's market leaves a massive hole in Boeing's future revenue and R&D investment. The pain spreads through Boeing's vast U.S. supply chain, threatening thousands of jobs and small businesses. Globally, the move disrupts supply chains optimized for efficiency, forcing companies to rethink where and how they build. Other industries are taking note. Reshoring and friendshoring may accelerate, raising costs for everyone. Consumers could see higher prices on everything from airline tickets to electronics. Economic uncertainty is rising, slowing investment and hiring. The stability we once took for granted is now at risk. The consequences will be felt in communities around the world. End of scene. Behind the headlines, thousands of workers and families face chaos and confusion, their daily routines upended almost overnight. In Zhoushan, the sudden closure of the Boeing plant means not just lost jobs, but shattered dreams and uncertain futures for many who depended on its success. Workers like Li Wei, who trained for years and built their lives around this job, now wonder how they'll support their families and what comes next. In the US, entire communities built around Boeing brace for layoffs, economic hardship, and the loss of a way of life. The uncertainty weighs heavily on families who've depended on aerospace for generations, leaving parents and children anxious about the future. The ripple effect spreads far beyond the factory walls, hitting suppliers, truck drivers, and small businesses that keep factory towns alive. The human cost isn't just lost paychecks, it's the erosion of community stability, the fading of hope, and the fraying of social bonds. Years of collaboration between American and Chinese workers are suddenly severed, fueling mistrust and uncertainty about the future of global cooperation. The real price of this geopolitical struggle is paid by ordinary people on both sides, whose lives are changed in ways they never expected. The bridges built by decades of cooperation and shared effort are now at risk of being lost forever. The future for these families remains uncertain, their hopes and dreams hanging in the balance. End of scene. To make sense of this crisis and understand its far-reaching implications, we turn to the experts for insight and perspective. Dr. Evelyn Reed calls Boeing's suspension a point of no return, the beginning of a new era of real economic decoupling between major world powers. She predicts more retaliation from China, a cooling of US-China business ties, and a significant shift toward alternative partners like Airbus and other global players. Mark Jensen, a labor analyst, says this is a wake-up call for US manufacturing, highlighting vulnerabilities that have been ignored for years. Expect a push for reshoring and investment in domestic supply chains, but the transition will be long, complex, and costly for businesses and workers alike. The risk: too much protectionism could ultimately hurt American innovation and slow technological progress. The key question: can the US and China manage their growing rivalry without triggering a global economic war that would impact everyone? The stakes could not be higher, as markets and livelihoods hang in the balance. The world is entering uncharted territory, where uncertainty and risk are the new normal. The choices made now by leaders and policymakers will shape the future for decades, affecting generations to come. We'll be watching every step of the way, bringing you updates as this story unfolds. End of scene. Boeing's suspension in China is more than a business story. It's a turning point for the global economy. Trust, diplomacy, and shared interests are breaking down, with swift consequences for jobs and stability. The world faces a choice: find a new balance between competition and cooperation, or risk a great unraveling. The decisions made now will echo for generations. This story is far from over, and we'll continue to cover every development. Thank you for watching, and join the conversation below. Good night.